All right, before I could hoist that armature up here and start connecting it to the car, I had to put this together here, get it twisted around to where the gap was right. I've got temporary flange on the bottom that I'm holding this because there's some details down there that will have to be determined based on the direction that the fender takes towards the tire. And how it's going to blend into the rocker. The rocker's, of course, got to come out an inch over here, and then an inch and a half right here, and then fade out to whatever it wants over there. But this angle here is yet to be determined, but I know I want this to be flush with this door right here, so I had to line that all up, get it twisted around, and then re-weld this back together. Of course, it was all primed before I did that, so that any surfaces I can't get to between these two panels are protected. And this is welded up permanently now to what will be the inner fender edge over here, and it's dropped down about 1/4 of an inch, which is roughly what it is on the stock fender. Anyway, that's where we're at right now. Just thought I'd show you something I'm doing to create a tie-down point in an area where there's just lightweight sheet metal. And what I've done is I've drilled a couple of holes on either side of where I want this cable, in this case, could be wiring, to tie down to. And I've taken this, it's just like an Allen head screwdriver, and I've torqued the sheet metal up a little bit here on both sides of the hole, like that. And you can see over here what I've done. It basically creates how you have the ability to fish a regular tie wrap through there, and then this will tie back to this point right here, and then you can snip off the excess. Anyway, just thought I'd show you that. And that's pretty much what it looks like when it's trimmed off. Anyway, moving on. All right, using the body line on the door, I ran a string across it and projected it out with the body stands so that I could line up this median line that I have on the armature over here, make sure everything is sitting in the right direction. I temporarily tacked it on the back side here. I don't want this to connect here. I want to cut this away around here. I only want the skin to be actually attached to the back. So I pin it here and here. You know, in the sun, this has a different rate of expansion here, and wherever this is attached over here, you'll see it. So this needs to be able to move slightly right here. We don't want this. If this has a some sort of a, normally has like a tarry substance or like a foam fill here to connect it to the fender in order so that the skin and the substructure can move independently. So like I said, I only want the perimeter attached as far as the skin, but so that's a little tricky because these pieces here, of course, will remain with the skin, so I have to project them out and basically to a point over here, but I can't attach them to that brace. At any rate, number of alignments over here, aligning with both the front edge of the hood and the top edge of the fender and hood over here, getting that all up and set just right. Yeah, just sneaking up on it a little bit. These are tacked over here, but this is something that I'll be removing from the armature once the fender is completed. But for now, they have to stay in place to space everything out, and that's where I'm at. Okay, decided to change directions a little bit again. Instead of using that piece of 3/8 tubing to define the outer corner, I think I'm going to just leave about 1/4 of an inch and bend it down and create a sheet metal corner. I'm just worried about, welding it up solid when you've got a heavy piece of metal and then sheet metal, and I don't want to have that disparity cause some distortion after everything's all said and done. At any rate, might be also wondering why I would cut this fender up and use panels from the fender instead of just starting out with some flat sheet metal, since I've got these. This is all going to be broken up into smaller pieces. These top two pieces will be probably separated right in here, and then this panel here will be all by itself. This will be something separate up over to here, and this also will be something separate. This piece may be one piece of sheet metal. I may have to make this one and shape this one in particular. This upper piece, though, is long, and it's got shape in both directions, which at the very top, the shape accelerates a little bit. In other words, it comes up with a gradual curve, then tightens up. That's pretty hard to achieve, and it's not necessary because there's that panel already shaped up. It's a lot of work to get that shape, and it's never perfect, so you end up having to, do a lot of work to get it, fix your low spots and things like that. The hardest thing to shape is a long, flattish panel that has just a little bit of shape in it. It's easy to make, believe it or not. Something that has a lot of shape is, quick and round and tight. But something like this long, it's very hard to handle, the English wheel, and then it basically, it's a lot of work for nothing since it's already here. The other thing is this top panel, most people don't notice the top of this fender. It just appears to be a flat top, roughly, with a little bit of shape in it. But what happens here with this particular piece is there is a shape that reverses. You can see there's a valley in here, right here. But this valley doesn't go straight. It fades out in this direction right here. And then also, this shape here has a slight curvature to it. So this is a gentle curve down into that valley, and then there's one coming in the opposite direction that trains off the hood, that starts from nothing over here, and then you can see it's very pronounced right in the center of the fender, and then fades out over here. So to get those two countervailing shapes, you have to be able to spread the metal out evenly, and then you have to be able to shrink it down over here on this edge, and then you have to wheel this section, staying out of that valley and keeping that valley defined. And that's just pretty nightmarish, just to put it mildly. Back when I was working at Hendrix, we had a 4-way shrinker, which is a shrinker stretcher with a head about that big around, and it pulls metal in from all directions. The ones that I have here, that blue piece right there, and then of course the smaller ones over there, they're a 2-way head. In other words, they just shrink metal from side to side gathered. So there's a limit as to how deep you can go in shaping a panel. With a panel like this, I'd want to go in deeper and pull the metal in all 4 directions, which is not possible with these shrinkers over here. At any rate, because it's easier to shrink metal than it is to stretch it all out. A little bit of shrinking, as I was once told, will make up for a lot of stretching. Usually the wheel is used to smooth things out after you shrink everything down into the shape you want it. Bottom line is I don't need any extra challenges. But that 4-way shrinker, we bought it used. I think it was a 30-year-old machine, and it was about $70,000 used. It had some miles on it, so. And the heads are extremely expensive also. At any rate, that's where I'm at. Okay, so I cut the top off the fender, and then I cut it into 2 pieces right around where this exhauster is going to go. So it would make it easier both to handle and also get creative to make this opening over here. Whoever media blasted these fenders didn't do me any favors because they were kind of warped up, so I had a lot of work to just get them hammered out and flattened out as best I can. You can see where there's this reverse here coming across here on this panel, because it arcs over in the back here so hard compared to a stock fender. I had to continue the valley on down here so that this would sweep back up to the hood, because this hood's a lot higher than a stock Charger because of obvious reasons for trying to miss all the stuff under the hood here. Anyway, so I had to extend this valley down, so what I ended up having to do is I tried, spreading the metal out first, but that didn't work out because this is such a hard arc. So I had to split it from here to here and then backfill it with some metal, weld it up. to create that extension of the, to draw that down into this area here, so it flows up into here, and then this close up into this area a little more naturally. It had a pretty big, because this already has a divot like this, a valley. When I arced it over, it turned this, reversed that, it turned it into a big hump. So this was, this was a valley, then it stopped right here abruptly, and then it became a big arc. So anyway, so that's where I'm at with that. Going to continue on from here. Okay, so this is definitely one of the trickier pieces to make on this car, because it switches directions so many times. You can't really see it too well here, but it sweeps down in this direction like this curvature here, so that it comes down into the door right here. It also has a small crown in this direction here to follow this shape over here on this part of this fender. Then it has to sweep back up in this direction, but also sweep around in this direction to follow the A-post. So it has to kind of blend in over here and come to here, and then it has to work its way around the hinge. I still got to add a piece back here and some support structure to keep it all, to maintain that maintain that shape. You can see where normally the static cowl would be. So now I have to make, this is all to cover this transition right in this whole area. So there's a lot going on right there. At any rate, one of the little tricks that I have when I'm making stuff like this is, if I want to trim it and it's laying on top of the piece that I'm trying to cut it to, is to cut a shape like this and then just tape it down, and then that way I can flip it back, put my piece in, then I could run this over, trace it around here, and then that'll give me my trim line. It's pretty accurate that way. Same thing, you can see this one here is still in place. I needed to trim this out to fit this inner curve over here, and so I just laid this piece on here, cut it, then I picked it up, laid the piece on top, dropped this back down, and traced it out. Anyway, that's where I'm at, and that's what I'm up to. Okay, so this piece here, went ahead and put a vertical stiffener on it so that it doesn't lose its shape in this direction. I also put a little strong back over here because it extends out into this area over here with no support. So I want to make sure that that also stays straight once it's all attached in here. Basically, once it's welded up, that it goes along with the skin and doesn't want to have its own life over here and deflect or bend up. Or it's kind of thin on the edge over here. I still have to add a piece on this end here that'll kind of go flat with the hood, kind of blend this area out over here as it comes off the hinge, kind of cover this hinge bolt, and then taper into this area right here. It'll be a little square joint back here, but that's about it. Anyway, I'm gonna weld that in and see what happens. All right, so this is where we're at with this so far. At any rate, this is all welded in and hammered up. Still got some irregularities, but that's the best I'm going to be able to do with this. This is really hard stuff off these original cars. It's not like the stuff that I'm using here where I can shape it easily. This is mild steel. It's almost like putty by comparison. At any rate, that's where I am now, and I want to see what I can do about starting to see what I can do about these side pieces. Okay, this was a bit of a tricky transition to have to deal with. Trying to keep some crown in this. At the same time, it has to then sweep down and reverse in this direction here. I added this little piece here so that we can take the hood skin, instead of following this line and having this exposed, we can drop the hood skin on, and we'll have an access over here for this bolt. But on the top side, it'll flow a little bit better from the back edge of the hood and sweep into the A-post like that. And then, of course, this transitions over here. What I had to do to make sure that this was all pretty solid and rigid was on the back side here. This is the advantage of cutting it into small pieces, by the way. I can't imagine handling an entire fender and doing this stuff. But I have this rib here, this vertical rib that basically stiffens it up from this point here and keeps this all flowing in straight. Added this little gusset here to keep this tab from rotating. And then I also added a piece of 1/4 inch tubing, hydraulic tubing, which then I faded out to nothing here so that it fades up into the A-post. And this is the finish that we're going to have on the back edge of the hood. So this is the beginning of the back edge of the hood from here on out. And then, of course, it'll gap for the bolt, but then it'll pick up the 1/4 inch tubing along the back edge of the hood. So that's where we're at with that. And so it's on to the next phase of the operation here, which is try and see how I can maybe fit up this side panel here. Obviously, because it's out so far, that it's going to change its shape and it's going to create some issues here on this door opening here. So I'd probably be adding a new flange, or cutting and adding a new flange to this back side over here. We'll have to see how that's going to all work out, because this is, you know, severely crowned out here, and if you flatten it out, then the thing would flatten out and be in its proper location. But as you pull out, it's going to pull away probably from this this door seam. So we'll see how that all works out, and we'll go on from here. Before I start fitting up this side panel here, I've taken some 50 thousandths aluminum and I've bent it up to the angle that the fender departs right here, and I'm shrinking and stretching it in both directions, both arcing over and sweeping in order to lay this up underneath, so that when I do put my panel up here, I'll have something to hold it up with, some clecos. Also, eventually there'll be an aluminum piece back here as a heat sink when I start to weld up this seam right over here. This will give me something that'll kind of soak up some of the heat from the welding. Anyway, it's just a matter of fitting it up, and so that I've got a little bit more control. This is the front side of the fender upside down, and you can see how that fits in there like that. And so anyway, that edge is not 100% bent over correctly. I just hammered and dollied it in a general direction, and I'll have to tune up on that as I go. Again, this is the advantage of basically having small panels to work with. You know, it's a little easier to take these pieces and, you know, really tune them up. So that's what this ends up looking like. It's just taped in place real quick. What I'll do is I'll put these panels on and I'll drill through the cleco holes I already had into the frame and the fender tops to secure it in place with just those. Okay, so what's going on here now is I've cut down this panel to the absolute minimum of what I need here. Got rid of the rim that holds the shape of the wheel hole. Obviously I'm going to be cutting it out a lot larger than the stock location. I got rid of the rim on the back side, because rather than fool like I did with the door and had to end up you know, welding up the edges because it was splitting out, I decided I'll put a whole new flange on the end over here. This bottom panel over here had a lot of custom work to meet the rocker, and it was full of holes because it was that's it over there. It's got rust holes and stuff at the bottom there, and I was gonna have to patch all that anyway and then cut it up. So I just cut the whole panel off and put a brand new panel there. This lower portion over here, generally when you build a Daytona, what you end up doing with this lower panel here is you'll cut it about an inch lower here, and then you'll fold it up so that it's even with this flange, so that there's a bottom panel that continues this arc. Instead of cutting in like this, it comes smoothly off of here with a bottom tray that bolts to the bottom here to complete the transition to the nose. Well, I'm not doing that. This is all going to be one piece. Also, instead of filling in this marker hole over here, and you can see I've got a lot of damage going on here. There's some welded up boogery going on here. Rather than fool with any of that, I just cut it about 1/4 of an inch below the body line right there, which is just drawn on at this point because the body line fades out to nothing. And then I'll make this one continuous panel, a nice smooth transition without any seam. Here's in order to get this this nose down to droop, based on the way this car is sitting, because this car sits a whole lot flatter than my car. My car is quite a bit up in the tail compared to this one. So while this one's lowered a little bit more than mine in the back, what that ends up doing is it ends up pitching the front of the car up a little bit. But I wanted the nose to at least start at the hood height that my car is, and this one is right about there. So in order to do that, what we've done is I've arced it over, and you can see how much I'm going to trim off the stock top of this top side of the fender. It's about 1 inch at the very front over here. So we've actually got the nose lower to the ground for this car based on this just shaping this fender and getting that hood to roll off and drop down a little lower, so that if this was in a stock location, the hood would have to be this much higher, and of course the nose then is kind of looking like it's pitching up in the air, which is kind of a horrible looking thing if you've seen them do that. At any rate, that's where I am with this right now. I'm going to cut the top of this fender off and start trimming it up. I also, with this in place, lowered this edge down a little bit because it was up probably about 3/8 of an inch higher than that. It just had a little bit too much arc in it, and I was going to have to add another piece of metal in here. And I said, you know what? It looks a little funny. Let me just lower it down a little bit and just let it meet this metal, so that this distance from here to here is actually the stock distance that you would have on a 70 Charger, and that's not altered at all. The body line, the same. The height of the door to the body line is stock. So all of our taper is coming in right in this general area right over here. So anyway, just sneaking up on it and just keeping an eye on all these transitions as you go along here. So you can see what's going on there. It kind of takes a little bit of a whip out, but that's part of getting out as far as we had to get out to do the tire. So anyway, that's what we're working on right now. Okay, in the department of once you see something, you can't unsee it. This fender was coming around and it was arcing over hard into this point, and then this line continues down the car here. Well, I can't really alter this line in the car. So what I did was I took the top off, and I'm going to have to adjust it. What I did was create a small return shape here. So this comes out, it goes around here, and then returns in a little straighter, so that this follows into this straightish, and then it starts out right in this neighborhood here before it starts to arc out. I'm going to have to basically make a little more gentle transition here. It's a little bit of a lump right there, but basically it's a whole lot better, just about not even 1/8 of an inch, but your eye is drawn to it when you see, you know, this line here and how it lines up there. And there's no way to body work that out, you know, if that was a, you know, some kind of a kink in a panel. But this is a very close point right here where the door opens, and so you can't be building this up with Bondo on either this piece or this piece in order to get that line. This has to be good in metal, or it's not going to be good at all. Anyway, back to work. I like to keep a hold of some of these brackets, that miscellaneous brackets that I cut out of the original car, the Challenger. You never know what might come in useful. This happens to be out of the inner door. This is how the hinges applied to the door jamb. Anyway, you can see on the one side it's a welded stud. On the other side there's a nut welded here, and the stud screws in there. So I need a couple of tabs to come off the frame rail at the bottom here to connect the bottom of this fender to the car. So this is a perfect size for that. So I'll just cut this off, and it has 2 legs up, which also helps to stabilize it so that the flange doesn't bend up and down, because you can weld up the sides of it. Anyway, just thought I'd show you that. You know, I know the urge is to toss out all the garbage that seems like garbage, But at least until I'm done the car, I like to save all this stuff. All right, might be a little bit hard to see with the clutter down here, but here's the pinch weld, and then here's this surface below the frame rail. And even with the frame rail, I have these 2 attachment points now, one here and one here. So I can bolt through a flange that'll be on the bottom side of the fender. Anyway, that's how that's all going to work. Okay, so here's a piece of 70,000 steel, pretty substantial. This is actually going to be the bolt-up plate. That's going to be attached to the substructure that's already existing there. And the bottom of the fender actually come down to this top edge here. Also, you can see that where it attaches to the car, there's a little, it's hard to see here, this lip here. You see where that line is? It's bent down slightly. That's so that any water that gets in up behind in this fender will drain out down that lip. Anyway, I'm going to put this on. Okay, so this plate now is connected up to this substructure. Obviously, because we have to come out at a pretty big angle over here in order to get out where the tire needs to go. Down here at the rocker, and we're only out an inch over here. You know, we'll pick up another probably 3/4 of an inch out there. It creates a little bit of an angle going back into the rocker here. Can't tell really because the rocker's still inboard here. The rocker has to come all the way out to here. At any rate, this is all connected to this, and all the old structure that I had under there that was temporary, that was the old bolt-up location for the stock fender, that's all going to get cut out now, because this is now permanent to this piece here. So I'm going to take the fender off and do some massaging, because this is a little lumpy here. Again, they had some crash damage here. You can see the old stud. They drilled a bunch of holes, pulled it out as best they could, filled it up with Mondo, so it's kind of, you know, it's a little bit cobbly up here. I got to run it through the English wheel and try to get this smoothed out a little bit better before I go any further with this, before I forget. Right now is the easiest time to do it because I have no flanges on there, and you can run the English wheel all the way off the panel. If I forget, then it'll be a whole lot easier, a whole lot harder to address that before I even go ahead and make this lower panel. Anyway, that's what I'm doing right now. Okay, so this is the old fender bottom, where it ties in at the back of the fender. And I told you before that this one here was pretty chewed up, and the new one was going to be a slightly different shape. So rather than to patch all this up and then have to add pieces here and there, it has no flanges on it right now because it had to be cut off. At any rate, and plus this doesn't fit, I made up another piece that fits my area that I have the perimeter designated for. In other words, like everything else, had the top perimeter, side perimeter, and the bottom perimeter. And also this wheel opening, this mock-up over here, I decided to move this wheel opening ahead about 3/4 of an inch, because right down there you could see the chassis, the end of the frame rail just sticking out a bit. I wanted to hide that. Anyway, so I closed up the wheel opening about 3/4 of an inch. It's still about 3/4 of an inch bigger on either side than the stock wheel opening, and it's cut up a little higher too in the center. At any rate, this is the panel I ended up with. It's got a slight roll in it in this direction, as you can see with this panel, slightly rolled. And this ties into that bottom of that plate that I just welded in on the bottom. I also put the edge that'll get folded over when I'm finally finished with all these panels. This will get folded over onto the reinforcement on the back side. And then this side here is the wheel opening stiffener, about 1/2 of an inch edge on there. This, I used this guide here to give me my lower corner, and I just left everything long on both the bottom and then the front. Cut this radius, and I kind of shrunk and stretched this to where this would roll up as I rolled it over, and then I brought the bottom piece in to meet them, and I welded it up and ground it off. So that's basically that lower panel, and I'll show it to you when I just get it clecoed on over there. All right, so there's that piece just clecoed into place. Now I'll just have to figure out what I want to do next here. I can do the rest of this door seam, which I have to cut away about 3/4 of an inch of the back of this fender and put a flange in there, a 90-degree flange shaped to the door opening, or I could move to the front and get involved with this panel up here in the front. I think I might stick back here, get all this nonsense taken care of. Okay, so I just added this return lip, so I have something to fold back onto the substructure to hold that all together, and welded that across the bottom. So now that's attached. We got a rim there, so I'm going to grind this down and then move on to the front of this panel over here. All right, I'm going to get ready to start this forward panel here. The first thing I have to do is take the blank and establish the top edge here. I have a small step, a 1/4 inch step put into the panel to help me attach this panel. And what I do in this general application is, when I can, I'll step the metal, I'll lay the other piece of metal over top of it and cleco it. And when it's all welded up, I'll go to the back side and I'll cut that step off. And what that does is, instead of it just being a butt joint here from metal to metal and having to keep an eye on it for warping and everything, that little step, the double thickness of metal behind there, keeps it straight. You don't want to leave that step afterwards because the double thickness there can actually, in the sun, create a different expansion rate, and it'll telegraph through the paint. Somewhere along the line you'll see that step. So you want to have a butt joint metal to metal for the ideal circumstance, but in order to just as a helping hand hold everything in place, I put that step in there first, and then I lay this piece over top here. Now what I've done is I've dropped this down about 1/2 an inch, and then I've laid the tape, 3/4 inch tape, right in the step, and I'm basically going to trace the arc, which is a very slight arc because the panel looks like a straight edge at the top, but it's a very slight arc, maybe less than a 3/32 of an inch arc. But nevertheless, you have to compensate for that, and so I had to transfer that arc to the panel and to cut that top edge first. All right, to get started with this, flat panel's not easily shaped because it's 0.45. So what I want to do is it has to roll underneath, and it has to kind of arc around towards the front of the car also. So what I'll do right now is I'm just going to put some general shape into it with this English wheel. I'm using a flatter die, it has a wide contact point on it. And I don't know if I've explained in other videos, basically what you're doing between these two anvils is you're squeezing the metal, and depending on the pressure that you add, there's a kick wheel at the bottom here. You can wind it up or down, and that basically will release the space or close the space up between these two dies. The upper is completely flat. The top, these flat, what I call flat, are actually slightly crowned over. And what they do is, it's just like squeezing a piece of putty. When you press it, it spreads out to the sides. And so what your objective is to try, where you want it to have more shape, you want more travel across that area. So basically, in order to get a crown in this panel, I'm going to be rolling it more in the center and then fading out long, so that as I go longer and longer on the passes, what happens is that the center raises up more because it's crossed over more times than each of the ends. So you start out in the center and basically move in longer passes and go across the whole panel to try and give it some shape. I'm going to just do a little bit of that now. Might add that I've already started doing this, so I'm going to get to the center where I left off. and so forth and so on for about an hour or two. Anyway, that's that. Okay, so you can see what I was talking about here, how this panel has a curve to it in this direction. So in addition to wheeling it, I shrunk the edge up a little bit to kind of drag it around the corner. And also, this area has worked a little bit more than the ends in order to bring this out to follow this contour a little bit. I've just hung it back on there to kind of get a closer trim, because the more material you have on your blank, the harder it is to work on it. So I'll want to get this thing, some of this excess material trimmed off of here, so that I'm not, working my butt off in an area that's going to get trimmed away. All right, I talked about stepping the metal and overlaying it. Basically, this is a pneumatic stepper. You can do this with on a bead roll die with stepping dies. This is a pretty expensive one, being a trigger grip like this. They sell inexpensive ones all day long at Harbor Freight and places like that, which are basically a straight body. What really counts is the quality of the jaws itself. But anyway, it basically slips on the end of the metal, and going along here and putting a step in the metal, as you can see right here. This way I can overlay another piece of metal right into this step over here, and it'll be flush with the top. Now, when we built stock cars, this was a normal way of joining panels together, because it's not meant to last a lifetime. You're going to cut these panels back apart after the car's damaged. At any rate, you wouldn't want to do this on a street car this way. Generally, as far as leaving the step there after you weld it up, we would just spot weld them every 1.5 inches. But if you're going to continuous weld this, you want to get rid of that step on the back side, like I said, because in the sun, that extra thickness, that double thickness of metal over time will telegraph through the paint. Anyway, I just thought I'd show you that. All right, so you can see how it's starting to work around. I'm starting to put some bend in the bottom to try and get it to roll underneath the car relative to this front shape here. I established this pattern here, and trying to get this all to fit without being under stress. Also, wherever it starts to flatten out, I'm trying to put a little bit more shape in there to try and maintain this curve over here. Yeah, just sneaking up on it, and that's about all you can do. Okay, so things are shaping up pretty good over here. This is the wheel opening, and the way I did this was marked it out where I wanted it, and then taped out an extra 1/2 inch. Got these pliers that I've modified, some pretty big strong dikes that I put some stops on that are 1/2 inch away from this, sharpened up this edge here, so that I can put it on the back side and slowly crank this thing over by hand a little at a time. Once it gets close to the neighborhood, then I take just a body hammer on this post dolly and just kind of try to smarten it all up, get a little sharper edge, and then naturally from folding the edge over, it loses its shape to a large degree. So you have to go back to the shrinker stretcher and shrink this and stretch this edge to back to what it's supposed to be. In this case over here, this is the front of the fender, and that's what that's starting to look like now. I still have a little bit of tuning up to do. You can see it's a little wobbly there, and see if I can get it just a little bit better than that. It's not ready to go on the car permanently, but it's getting close. All right, so that's where we are, and that's where we're going to leave it for this week. Still got quite a bit to do. I have to make some front flanges. I have to make some attachment points and the front of the fender. Finish out the return lip on the front of the fender, or the top of the fender. Have to tweak this arc up a little bit right here. It's a little flattish there from the pliers down to here, so it's going to need a little bit of work. What else? Well, I've got to figure out whether or not I want to work those scoops in now or wait till the fender's all welded together. Probably wouldn't be too bad of a thing to have the things put together before I put the side on there 100%. Just have to see how it goes. And at any rate, I'd like to thank everybody for watching again, and I will see you on the next one.